I mean, first of all, life is risk. I personally think that the riskiest thing we can do is do absolutely nothing with our money, because our money is dying in the bank.
Hey, my name is Melissa Lane, and I'm obsessed with all things self-empowerment, self-development, spirituality, and holistic healing to help you navigate this thing called life in a more fulfilled way. Ever felt like you missed the class on how life works? So did I. I'm just a regular girl who grew up not understanding how to create success, where to find fulfillment, or how to live a life that I actually enjoyed. So I went on a journey of self-discovery, and it led me to the realization that everything about living a fulfilling life can be learned. And so the LifeKraft Podcast was born. Here, you'll learn how to stop letting life just happen to you and how to begin crafting a life you can actually get excited about. No topic is off limits here, from the scientific to the mystical and everything in between. Difficulties, failures, growth, victories, and more are all real life happenings that myself and our guests will discuss. Think of this as your library to life, where you can tune in whenever you feel like you have no idea what you're doing. Get ready to be challenged and encouraged to craft a life you're actually excited to wake up to. This is the LifeKraft Podcast. Do you want to grow your wealth, health, and happiness? Trader, investor, and coach Lewis Crompton helps people do just that. In this episode of the LifeKraft Podcast, I had the pleasure of talking with Lewis about his journey to becoming a trader, on building wealth, the myths and risks involved with trading, money and the shifting landscape, and so much more. Lewis is not only one of the kindest people I've had the pleasure of talking with, he genuinely cares about people and wants to see you win. Oh, and did I mention he says you can start building your wealth in only 30 minutes a day? So grab a cup of tea or coffee and go on that mental health or hot girl walk, because you'll want to give this episode your full attention. Also, be sure to leave us a review and subscribe to this podcast so that I know what you want to hear more of. Ready to change your mind about building wealth? Let's go. Just a disclaimer, we do use some adult language, so put on your headphones if you're around the kiddies. And the audio quality on my mic isn't as great as usual as I was traveling around, but it doesn't take away from the powerful conversation. Enjoy. Welcome to the LifeKraft Podcast. I'm so excited for our audience to get to know you. I've been consuming your content for months, and I have learned so much. It's made such a big impact on my life and how I view wealth. And I wanted to have you on the podcast to not only teach us about the amazing world of trading and personal finance, but really to get into the mindset of it. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So before we get going with all of the trading stuff and the wealth and the money and all of those juicy things, I'd love to get into your childhood. I know that if we want to look at who we are today, our childhood made such an impact on us. What was your childhood like? And was there a period of time or an event that really made an impact on the man that you are today?
Yes, definitely. I would say my childhood was quite a mixed bag. My parents are actually amazing, although I didn't realize that for a number of years. I had a lot of tension with my parents, I think partly because my worldview was very different to theirs. I think partly because of other things happened in my childhood. So it was quite a mixed bag. And I think I held a lot of blame towards my parents, which wasn't necessarily warranted to them. So that created quite a lot of tension. And it's only, like I said, only in recent years that I've kind of started to unpick that and work through that, and now have a really good relationship with my parents. I wouldn't say necessarily had a terrible relationship with them. Like, they weren't toxic individuals, they weren't bad or anything like that. We just kind of missed each other in terms of communication a lot of the time. And I think so I chose spirituality, I chose Christianity at quite a young age, and they weren't really Christian or spiritual. So that, again, massively different belief system and worldview, to be growing up in their house with a very different mindset and way of wanting to operate in the world. So yeah, there was a big difference there. Not getting too deep too quickly, but in terms of big events that happened in my childhood. So I experienced abuse as a child, again, not from my parents, from external to the home. And that, I think that has had such obviously a very defining impact on who I am and how I operate in the world, in both a positive way and also in a negative way. I think it's made me very sensitive to other people, very compassionate, but interestingly, only in like the past, well, how old am I now? So I'm 32 now. So only in the past, I would say 8 years or so, where I started realizing that stuff had actually happened to me when I was younger and starting my own healing journey. I would say before then I was quite hard-hearted because I'd shut everything down on an emotional level. So when that emotional stuff started coming out, it's very painful, but it's made me a far better human being. And by better, I just mean I'm more considerate, I'm more compassionate. I still have my moments where I'm an utter difficult person, shall we say. But a lot of that comes from the internalized pain that I still am working through and dealing with, which my other half has to put up with sometimes, which is not very nice for them.
Yeah, but that's human. I always love, like on LifeKraft, we get deep really quickly and we unpack these things because they kind of weigh us down when we want to get to the hustle, the dream building, the career building, the relationships. And I want to ask you in regards to that, if you'd be comfortable to share just a little bit about how you went about the healing journey, because growing up in a house where you have different beliefs from your parents, that was me. I was a little alien in that house. I used to ask over and over again, are you sure I wasn't adopted? Is there some story people are not telling me? Because I felt so strange. And I was this little spiritual God girl who was just immersed in that world. And just like you, I relate so much to your story. Only later I realized, wow, I have this trauma that's showing up in these different ways. And it's kind of held me back in so many ways.
Yeah.
How did you go about your healing journey? How was there a fundamental thing that happened, or was it gradual like mine was, where I just realized I cannot go on like this and I need help, and the teachers started to come? How did you go about that?
For me, it was kind of a mixture of both gradual and all of a sudden. So when I think I was quite lucky that my trauma was so damaging early on that it shut a lot of stuff down. So I didn't feel the pain of it for years. Yes, okay, that caused problems in terms of my character and personality in other ways, but I didn't feel it for years. And for me, part of the reason, looking back, that I chose the very strict religious system and spiritual system that I chose is because when you go through trauma, everything feels unsafe. There's no such thing as boundaries. And so having such a rigid belief system, which was very, very black and white, which is how I operated, there is right, there is wrong, there is no leeway, there's no gray, it's either black or white, made me feel internally, mentally and emotionally safe. But I didn't have the realization that that's what was going on until a lot later on. So when I was 18, I was working with a church ministry, which was a very, very spiritual organization, doing inner healing work. And so I trained with them basically as a counselor, as a therapist within that context. And I remember one day we were filling in questionnaires, which we had our, not patients, because we weren't doctors or anything, but our clients, I'll say, which our clients would fill in. And so we had to learn to fill them in and what all the different parts of it meant. And so I filled in this form just as part of the learning process. And then we got to the bits which I'd answered in a particular way. And it turned out that if you answer those questions in a particular way, you got significant trauma. And I was like, where did that happen? Like how I'm not aware of that. I don't know if this is right. This doesn't make sense to me. And then over the next few years, I started to have memories start to come back. So I started getting intrusive memories, which anybody who knows about trauma, that can happen. All the memories which were suppressed for whatever reason, because you create like a pain body where you hold all the pain and all the memories because you dissociate. Those dissociated memories started to filter back in. And initially I just thought they were about other people or just random thoughts. And then I realized it was me that was in the memories. So then that healing process started to work, and I started to address that through counseling. And then it got really bad when I was about 26, and I went through a horrendous breakup, my first proper adult relationship. Again, I never let myself get into a relationship because they weren't safe places, but I didn't realize that until later on. And then my first relationship, I let myself fall in love and be in a proper relationship, ended up being really toxic. And so then that broke. And then that very, very difficult process and toxicity in that relationship destroyed all of my coping mechanisms on an emotional level. So then it was like, excuse my French, but the shit hit the fan for me emotionally. And I was like, I cannot operate. And I can't tell you how grateful I am that I, years before, had decided to start investing in myself in terms of financial education. Because if I wasn't trading for money, I don't know how I would have survived that period on a financial level, because I wouldn't have been able to maintain a job. I just wouldn't have been able to do it. So when I went in, I remember being stood in the car park outside my flat during that period where it was all really bad, and thinking I was literally about to feel my mind snap and have a mental breakdown. Like, it got to that point. Thankfully, that didn't happen. And I had quite good people around me, and I was putting myself through therapy 2-3 times a week, just to maintain some form of functionality. And so it was kind of, bits of it were gradual and bits of it were very much all of a sudden. And then, even in my current relationship where I'm now engaged, the first 6-12 months of that was me just detoxing all of my horrendous toxicity from learned behaviors from that past relationship. So my poor current partner just had to see the light at the end of the tunnel and have hope that things would get better. And most of the time now they are. I mean, I still have the odd moment, as we all do. But we tend to know where it's coming from and can address it a lot quicker.
It's such a powerful story, because I don't think a lot of people realize how deeply we suppress things like that. I completely disassociated as well. For years, if you asked me about my childhood, I was like, it was amazing. I had the best childhood. And then these memories came flooding back, and I started it's a strange thing. And I don't think a lot of people talk about it when those memories start coming back, and you don't know if it's a memory or a thought coming in, or where does this come from, because you completely just put it away, like you said, in that pain body. And it has such a big impact, and especially on close relationships and not feeling safe. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the most amazing things I learned was, if you don't feel safe in your body on this earth, you cannot create wealth.
Yeah.
You can't allow wealth in. You can't do that whole process of that in and out flow when it comes to money. So how did you get onto the whole path of building wealth and creating this amazing business that you have now?
Yeah. So the business was kind of a surprise in one sense. I always knew I wanted to build wealth. I say that actually. I think when I was initially in like that spiritual religious context, I thought poor was righteousness and poor was purity. And actually within the church context that I was in and the spiritual context I was in, I met people who were very wealthy and showed me the other side, and actually that's not true. And so that started to break that at that point. And so when that started to break, I started to reignite passions I had as a child. And I remember my parents always asked me, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I want to be wealthy, but not work that much, and that type of thing. Which I
relate to that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people do.
Yeah. And I do still believe in hard work, but I like, my favorite thing is when something is happening while I don't have to be there making it happen. So that's probably why I love trading so much, because the market's moving and making me money without me having to be there. I've done the initial work, I've done my analysis, I've done all of that, but then it's actually doing its thing, making money without me being there. It's why I love dishwashers. It's why I love washing machines, because I press a button, it does it. I can go and do something else and be productive somewhere else and come back and then it's done. I don't know why, I just absolutely love that stuff. And so I remember being a kid doing a paper round and delivering papers to all the doors in the neighborhood. And I just remember looking at the houses and thinking, why would I have a pension when I could own that house and rent it out? And I don't know where that thought came from as a kid whatsoever, but I just never trusted the government maybe. So I never trusted pensions. And so I always wanted to create wealth, and I just never knew how to go about it. And then when I finished university, so I was about 21, I had some friends from university who I went and saw for the weekend, and they told me about this guy called Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I read his book, and then he had a seminar in London, which is where I lived. So I signed up for the property investment seminar, went along to it, turned up, and it turned out I'd signed up for the wrong thing. So I was like, oh, what's happened here? I was like, I've definitely registered. And they went, wait a second, let's have a look at this other list. They looked at the other list, and that was a trading seminar, and I'd accidentally signed up for the trading seminar. So call it divine intervention, call it whatever you want, but I ended up in that seminar about trading financial markets, and I was completely sold. I paid a lot of money for a weekend training, paid a lot of money for then mentorship after that, even more money. And then 7 months after being on that course, I left my job. And so I started to trade and travel, and that was my primary income. And then I, about a year after that, started teaching for Robert Kiyosaki's brand, Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I taught for them. And then while I was traveling around the world, I'd pop into different training events, and I'd help teach at those events. And it got to the point where I really loved doing that, but I wanted to help more people and kind of more on my own terms. And with if I'm honest, a lower entry cost in terms of the financial element, because their training is very, very expensive. Now, don't get me wrong, it's very good, but my training is just as good. It's just not as expensive, because I wanted to be able to help more people. And that thought kind of kicked off initially in South Africa. And I think I was speaking at an event for Robert Kiyosaki in, I think it was Johannesburg. And I'd done such a good job of making people realize what was possible and that they could use this to change their life for the better. And there was so few people that could actually afford for me to help them at that price point. So it's like, I need to do something off my own back to help these people. So that's why I created Star Trading, wrote an ebook which people could get for free. And then, yes, okay, I've got course and mentorship, and not all of them are cheap, but at least I know the stuff I give away for free will keep people at least safe if they want to give this a really good go and a really good start.
I love that whole story, not only the divine intervention, but one of the things that always stood out for me when it came to you and Start Trading and how you trade is how little time you spend a day doing it, and then the freedom that it gives you.
Yeah.
And I think we all live in a world where we all want more freedom. We're starting to see through the bullshit, and we're starting to see that the old paradigm is shifting, and it is not the way that the world works anymore. And we want to create wealth while remaining free.
Yeah.
I think there are so many people who felt like you when you were younger. Well, like, why would I not want my money to work for me? I want to put in the effort, but I don't want to work as hard as I've seen other generations work. So what makes trading so amazing? When it comes to investing your money there, really putting in that, like you always say, 30 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is amazing because if you trade correctly and safely, it's exponential growth. Okay, you may have not a lot to start with, but and it's not a get rich quick thing, but if you give it the time, you give it the right energy, you give it the right effort, you can turn a small amount of money in 2, 3, 5, 10 years into phenomenal wealth, regardless of how small you start with, if you've got the skill set. So it's for me such a doorway for people to more time and more money, and therefore freedom. And that's what it was for me. It just opened up the door to so many different things. And like you said, I do constantly say just 30 minutes a day. And that is 100% the truth. And my students never believe that when I tell them, like, beforehand. And then when they're actually doing it and making money, and I ask them, how long did you spend per day doing this? And they say less than 30 minutes. I'm like, there you go. And so because of the systems and the processes which we follow, and we call it the Star Trading method, because of that method, we know that we can trade for less than 30 minutes a day, and people can make very, very good money doing that and keep their time freedom. There's no need to spend more time in front of your charts. You can do if you want to, don't get me wrong, but just more time in front of the charts doesn't necessarily mean more money.
So many people think that something like trading is something that takes up a lot of their time. It's a brand new skill that they have to learn. They might not understand the lingo. They might still be in that culture of just saving money and putting it in a bank and not understanding these things that sound so scary. What is the basics that people just need to understand about trading so that they can start believing in how effective it is? So yes, you don't have to do it full time. It only takes a couple of minutes a day. But
for someone who is brand new and doesn't understand it at all, but wants to start creating wealth, wants to start just using their little savings every month in a different way, where do we start?
So there definitely is a mindset. And I think that one of the bits of the mindset is that this is not get rich quick. If you want somebody to do it all for you, then what I do isn't for you. You have to be someone that wants to take control of your own finances and be able to make your own financial decisions. I do not trade for you or on your behalf. What I do is I teach you a skill set which you will have for the rest of your life. And if that is something which sounds attractive, because it's a skill set which you have for the rest of your life, which means you can turn 10 euros into 100 euros over a given period of time, then trading is for you. If you want to maybe still do the job that you do, I mean, maybe you want to get out of it, but in the early stages, if you still like what you're doing in terms of work, but you want more money and you want a different income stream, an additional income stream, and you want that to not take a lot of time, then the way that I teach trading is the thing that you want to do. And people say, well, why would I learn to trade when I can set up a business? I went, have you ever set up a business? No. So you've got no idea how much work is involved. If you want that much work, then fine, not a problem. But trading, if you do it well, in 5 years will 99% of the time way outstrip any profit that you would make from a business. And you only have to trade 30 minutes a day. And you don't have to deal with people. And you don't need to have stocks and products and everything like that. Like you don't. It's just you, the market, and that's it. And your skill set that you learn. That's all you need. So yes, you do need to learn. I think it's incredibly hard to self-teach when it comes to trading. I would never say it's impossible, but it's incredibly difficult. The smartest people I know haven't managed to do it, and maybe that's saying something about the smartest people I know. I don't know, but they tried and they've not made a success of it by themselves. And I'm not the smartest person. I got help and therefore I've made a success of it. So I'm not saying it's impossible to learn for yourself, but you will take a heck of a lot longer to actually master this skill. And B, you will lose more money in the markets than you would do if you actually just learned the correct way to do it first time round. Like one of my favorite quotes is, and it's a quote I said about me, so I'm quoting myself, which is a bit weird, but I'm smart enough to know that I'm dumb enough that I need help.
Ooh, yes, every coach understands that.
Yeah.
You can 10x your journey if you get someone to help you. You don't have to go through. It always feels like a coach is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. They can just take you there faster with better results and less pain, less suffering, less losses. If someone's listening to this and getting all excited like I am, what makes a good trader?
Ooh.
Like if they're sitting there doubting themselves now, what makes a good trader? Because I know if we're in the poverty mindset, I was immersed in the poverty mindset. My audience knows. Like every gnarly belief I had, and I had to uproot that and find awakening in regards to that and really see that I have the ability to create my own rules and my own paradigm, and it shifts. But if someone is still kind of wavering and they're thinking, this sounds too good to be true, kind of what do I need to be able to start with mindset-wise, finance-wise?
Yeah. So finance-wise, you could start with as little as $300 in terms of money that you need in an account. So you could start with as little as $300. Obviously, if you've got budget for education as well, then you'll need money for education as well. When it comes to mindset, just a willingness to learn and a willingness to start. There's different personality types. I mean, we've talked a little bit about different personality types already before this call. But if I was just to break all personality types into just four, which I tend to look at when I'm talking about trader personalities. So you've got amiable, you've got expressive, you've got drivers, and you've got analyticals. Now, people always think that if you're quite analytical, you're going to be a really good trader. That's not necessarily the case, because you're going to have your inherent weaknesses, like the fact you don't like making a decision because you want to gather more information. So there isn't really a particular personality type which makes the better trader or makes a good trader, because all of the personality types have their strengths when it comes to trading and all of them have their weaknesses. So I would say the primary skill set from a mindset perspective that people should have is just a willingness to learn and to adapt and to be patient. That's really what you need. And then you need to develop the strength to stick to a set of rules. So if you can follow a set of instructions, then you can be a successful trader.
And I'd love for you to talk about that, just following a set of rules, because I know people personally who have lost a lot of money to scams, to these traders, these, what is it, day traders, and people like that who really just tell them, this is a get rich quick scheme, just give me your money and I'll put it in the markets for you. How do we navigate that? I know it's like, we get back to the whole thing of just buy your course, but a lot of people might think that, no, I can do it on my own. No, I can figure it out on my own. No, my cousin can help me because he understands some of it. It's really dangerous. Would you just get into that a little bit so that people just understand there are real risks at losing your money if you don't invest in the right places?
There is. And the cousin one is always one that makes me laugh. It's like, okay, so your cousin's trading successfully. Okay, how do you actually know that? But also, even if they are a successful trader, brilliant, fantastic, well done. Being a fantastic trader doesn't mean you're a fantastic coach or teacher. They are very, very different skill sets. There's not actually that many people who are good traders and good coaches and mentors when it comes to trading stuff as well. I'm very lucky that I learned how to trade off of a very good trader and a very good teacher. I'm also very lucky that I now am a good trader, but I'm a better teacher, and teaching is in my blood. My parents are teachers, their parents were teachers, so teaching comes very naturally to me as well. So I'm very lucky in that respect. When it comes to scams, most people fall down at scams because they're being greedy and they kind of want something for nothing and they don't want to put the work in. So as my dad always tells me, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And by too good to be true, I just mean I have to do absolutely nothing and I'm going to make a load of money. Because that sounds legitimate, doesn't it? It doesn't work like that. And then I think a lot of people give their money over to somebody else because they don't want to take personal responsibility for their own finances. That's also not a good thing. And that's why I say what I do is I teach you how to do it for yourself. That for me is empowerment. And that for me is freedom. Because say you give your money to somebody or you're following these dodgy signals, which always seem to work for a few weeks and then miraculously they stop working. Then what happens when that person disappears, even if it is legitimate? What do you do then? Whereas if you learn from somebody and you actually go on a true training process, which is tried and tested and has been across hundreds of students, then if that person disappears, A, you've still got access to the education, and B, you've got the skill set in place. So it doesn't matter if that person disappears. You still got it there. You've got it inherently there, ready to go and keep deploying it and keep using it to make more money. There's loads of different types of scams out there. There's loads of dodgy brokers out there as well. So you have to be careful with what broker you use. So, I mean, like even in the ebook, I talk about that so people can stay safe if they're picking a broker and they want to do it alone. But people always think they can do it alone. Then they go and try it and then they realize they can't. And then they come back. So like you just wasted X number of months and X number of amount of money where you could have just invested that money. I mean, I had somebody the other day who I'd been speaking to who wanted to learn to trade. And they said, the conversation kind of stopped and they said they're going to give it a go for themselves. Long story short, a fake account, which was pretending to be me, asked if they wanted to give them some money. They lost £50,000 to this person because that person was just going to do it for them. Whereas I can't control that. I've told people I don't know how many times that I don't trade for you, I teach you to trade, and someone still fell for it. Unfortunately, because they wanted something for nothing, really. Whereas if they could have put a fraction of that into education with me and now have a skill set which would have earned back the money they'd paid me and now be way more financially better off with a new skill set in place for the same amount of time. But they've lost £50,000 instead.
It makes so much sense. And as a coach, I see that people love just giving their power over. I think it's just the way that the world has been structured, where we give our health over to doctors and we give this over to the government and we give our money over to the banks and they'll look after it. And someone might have grown up with really kind of conservative parents who believe you work a 9 to 5 and you put your money in the bank and you do that whole thing. And they have an inkling of saying, you know what, I don't think I want to do that anymore, but it feels unsafe. It feels risky. Isn't trading risky? Can't I lose everything? Can't I just completely mess it up in a way where I lose all of my money, even if I got training?
Yeah.
Isn't it safer to just keep my money in a savings account? Because we always have those personalities. What would you say to them? Because I know there are amazing nuances to trading where you can actually win whether you lose or not. So, yeah, can you get into that a little bit?
Sure. And I mean, first of all, life is risk. I personally think that the riskiest thing we can do is do absolutely nothing with our money, because our money is dying in the bank. If you have money in the bank because that's the safe place to put it, it is rotting away. I mean, I don't know what inflation is where you are at the moment, but here it's pretty high, and our savings rates are pathetic. I mean, if you want to believe there's conspiracy theories or whatever, then fine. I don't put too much energy into it. But what I will tell you doesn't make sense to me is that banks can be making X number of percent on inflation and investing money, which beats that, yet they're only giving you on your savings, which is what they're using to make that money, 0% of whatever. It's criminal. I mean, that's criminal. It doesn't make any sense to me.
But I don't think people know that, Lewis. I don't think we know.
Yeah.
We just trust these institutions that were put in place before we were
Yeah,
born.
yeah. And I think it's just, even if the information is technically there, people don't join the dots. So they don't join the dots between, oh, inflation's really high. Isn't that terrible? With my money is in the bank making just this percent, but that means inflation is eating away. So my money is literally dying by 5% every year just by putting those two numbers together. But people aren't taught to, and it's made difficult for them to make that connection. The way in which I trade as well is really, really low risk. So one guarantee I always give to students is if you follow the risk principles I teach you, there is no way you could blow your entire account and lose all your money. It's just literally impossible, because we do risk really low. Once you get into slightly more advanced styles of trading, you can have what we call zero risk trades, where you have zero risk on the table, but you can still make profit. So, I mean, again, there's details and nuances within that as well, but it is definitely something which is a possibility. So people do think this stuff is risky because they see all the stuff on the news about this person's lost that, this person's lost that. 75% of retail traders lose money. I'm like, yeah, because they're not educated. They're just having a gamble. They're having a guess. We do not gamble. We do analysis and we make investment decisions. Very, very different to gambling.
And I love that you say we, because I know you have a wicked community. That's what I love about your entire, not only the course, I mean, anyone who wants to get involved with star trading will realize you guys have such a great community and you learn from each other. Why is that important, especially when it comes to something like trading?
I think it's important in life. And I think the more community you can have, the better. I think modern life has broken down and eroded community. I mean, if I think about my street, I can wave at people and say hello, but there's not really community. I don't really know them. We're not really connected and we live on the same street. And I think if you went back 20, 30, 40 years, there was that level of community. People knew people in the area, and you don't have that. So I think community in life is really, really important. But I think when it comes to online communities, online groups, and when it comes to education, and for me, what's so important and so powerful about having a community around trading is, yes, trading brought us together, but it's not what keeps us together. There's an additional element. We've got relationship, we've got connection, we've got support structures in there, for more than just trading, but also for life. And being able to see other people who are just like you, who started at the same time as you or started later than you, now making a success of their trading and watching their journey, is so powerful for your own belief system that this is possible for me too. And I always say that people in star trading, if they're not being successful with their trading yet, and I always say yet because there's always time, yet, then they know what the reason is, because we so methodically have a process. And if you're following that process correctly, you're like just way more likely to be successful. And if you're not, you know, there's probably one of those areas that you're not doing to the level that you should be doing it. So yeah, it's really, really important from a social proof perspective, from an encouragement perspective, from a support perspective, and just a human relationship connection perspective as well.
Yeah, it makes such a big difference, especially when you're learning a new skill and you're doing something that you have no knowledge about. If there was one piece of advice that you could give someone to start building wealth, except for trading, whether it's mindset, whether it's a skill they need to acquire, whatever, what would it be?
Oh, except for trading. It would be to learn sales.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's something I learned. Yes.
It's so important.
Getting all excited about that one. Yeah. Why would you say that?
So sales is a dirty word for a lot of people. And it's not. I love sales. And I think that when you understand what sales is, which is really just persuasion, I'm not going to say manipulation. I think some people go into manipulation when it comes to sales. I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah, we have that idea of that used car salesman with the golden chain around his neck, but it's not that.
No, it's not that. I mean, if I didn't sell people on the idea of trading, then people wouldn't change their lives. I wouldn't have students that have been able to leave their jobs. I wouldn't have students that have managed to trade their way out of debt. Like, none of that would have happened. So sales is really important. But even if you're not selling a product within your own business, you are selling yourself. You are learning how to present an opportunity to people. You're learning how to get your way, get your will in a situation, which is really, really important. Whether you're in a job, you're in a business, whatever it is, if you say you work for a company and there's something is the right thing for your company to do in a particular situation, you need sales skills to get that across to people and help them see what you're seeing and why it's so important. That is sales. Sales isn't the dodgy car person trying to sell you a dodgy car.
It's not at all. I love that. And I realized that it's as simple as I went to a really great restaurant and I call my friend and I tell her, you have to go to that restaurant.
Exactly.
Because the pizza there is just fantastic and you have to go there. Next time you're in my town, you have to go there. That is sales. That's just really conveying a message of what you believe in, knowing that it has benefit for the other person as well. How is that going to help you build wealth in the long term? Because people are very poverty conscious. As you said, inflation has gone up. So much has changed in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
How will something like sales help you build wealth?
How is it not? So, I mean, even if you think about it from, not everybody can afford to set up a business or is going to be trading overnight. So let me just make it really like universal and talk about a workplace. If say the economy gets really, really tough and the job market gets really, really tough and really, really scarce, there's two people who have got the same skill set. They've got the same education. Everything about them on their CVs is exactly the same. They both go to an interview. Who's going to win the interview? If everything about them is the same, I'll tell you who's going to win. The person who sells themselves better to that organization. Whoever has the better sales skills will win because they're selling themselves as much as anything else. You can get a job where you're less qualified than someone who's more qualified if you sell yourself better to that organization.
Do you think sales has got anything to do with confidence? Do you need to have confidence to be able to have skills and sell yourself? Because I know a lot of people struggle with confidence as well. Even if they look successful, I know a lot of successful people who don't feel confident in themselves.
Yeah.
Is that necessary, or can we kind of fake it till we make it?
Oh, I definitely think you can fake it till you make it, but I also definitely think it helps. And the problem with faking it until you make it is at some point you might get caught out, or you'll fake yourself into a position which you can't handle, and that's also not good. So faking it till you're making it, I'm completely on board with, to a point and to an extent. And when I say fake till you make it, I don't mean fake being rich. That's just stupidity. Like, that's how you get into debt. So I think faking it till you're making it in terms of inhabiting the type of person you want to be when you're in particular situations, that's really, really important. But faking having certain skills is not a great idea. Like, funny stories like actors who write on their acting CV that they can ride a horse, and then they get a part where they have to ride a horse, and then they get kicked off the horse because there's no idea, and then they lose a job, and then they ruin their credibility.
It makes me think of Joey Tribbiani in Friends, who said he could speak French and then he couldn't. And that's what I think about every single time. I'm like, you can't fake it till that degree because you still can't learn French in a couple of days. But that's so powerful, Lewis. And in not getting too much into the whole conspiracy theory thing, I know a lot of people feel like conspiracy theories have actually become just everyday truths these past couple of years for us. But I think as a collective, we can all feel that we are shifting into a whole new way of going about life.
Yeah.
Old things are breaking down, new things are being created, and it can feel really scary.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we really are seeing changing is the landscape of finances as well, and where that's headed. And who has access to it, and who can create it, and all of those things. So I know that's why I got you on. It's so important to start learning about these things before shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
Or a breakdown comes, or something changes drastically that we weren't prepared for. It's not always something bad.
Yeah.
But what do you think is one thing that you would love to leave the audience with in regards to the changing landscape of wealth and finance? Things like crypto coming in, and just banks, the role of banks changing, all of these things.
Yeah. I think something I think about a lot, and I will always caveat whatever I say with, I'm an evolving, changing human being as well. So my thoughts on things, I give myself permission to change my thoughts on things over time. But bringing things down to kind of like a fairly base level, think of money as a game. It's just a game. You can either play it well or you can play it badly. The rules are the rules. Yes, sometimes the rules get changed on you, but they're still the rules of the game. So you've just got to learn to play the game, have some fun with it, do what you need to do to make money, and you can play at whatever level you decide to play at. You just have to make a decision as to how to get there and the fact you can. So money is a game. Play the game. Don't hate the game. Decide what level you want to play at, and then believe that you can achieve it. Those are the key things really when it comes to money for me.
Brilliant. That is a quote. Books that change the game for you, or books that you think every single person needs to read, whether it's about wealth, whether it's about trading. Just read Lewis's book. It's free on his website. But whether it's about anything like that, or just spiritual, or just doing life better, what would you suggest to us?
So 2 books I always kind of reference. One is called The One Thing. It's a really, really good book about how to structure your time and how to be productive. If you've ever read The Slight Edge, I mean, I prefer it to The Slight Edge, and everyone raves about The Slight Edge. So it's called The One Thing. And then there's another book which changed my life and really helped me understand me better. So if you've ever experienced any form of trauma, you'll want to read this one. And it's called The Body Keeps the Score. I can't remember the name of the author, but The Body Keeps the Score. Absolutely fascinating book, which was a massive eye-opener to me about why I am the way that I am and why I respond to certain situations the way that I do.
I love that. Before I get to my last question, and I can't believe we have to wrap this up, I would talk to you for ages. It feels like I'm just absorbing information like a sponge. I want to take a moment to acknowledge you. I heard a quote by Jay Shetty that says, before you can take a step forward, you need to take 3 steps deeper. And you embody that for me. It feels like you building your life, your wealth, your relationships, working through your trauma, going through your journey, took so many steps deeper as well with every step forward that you took. And you embody that. And you have such an amazing way of making something like trading not scary. For a girl like me who grew up really poor and had to learn about wealth and abundance and finances and money all by herself on a farm. So I just want to acknowledge you for that, and having a sense of humor at these times about all of these things, and really creating community in a place that feels really competitive and feels really dog eat dog, really creating that type of community. So I just want to acknowledge you for that, and for all of the wisdom that you share. I can feel that you love helping people succeed, and it's everyone should just go and follow him. He's got the best stories. There's always some funny thing that he shares on his stories. You need that in the middle of your day. Where can our audience get connected with you and get to know you a little bit better?
Yeah, the best place really is my Instagram, I think. I do spend most of my life on there. So be careful, because there are some fake accounts of me. So be careful who you follow. But it's Lewis, LEWIS _ just 1 _ because there is a fake account with 2. So just 1 _ Crompton, which is CROM for Mike, PTON for November. And that's me. So at Lewis _ Crompton. And that's the best place.
Brilliant. I'll share that in the description below. Everyone can just follow the links there and follow the links to your offers as well and see what might work for them, or just at least go and download your free book. I know it's very powerful, and I loved how much you get into mindset in that book as well. So let's get to the last question. What is one thing that we can do as of today to live our everyday lives better?
Oh, do you know what? Something I'm going to give you 2 here, I'm afraid. So from a progressively changing your self-perception, using mantras for that. Mantras are so important. Like when I realized the only way to change a belief is to reaffirm a new truth into your brain and into your psyche and let that sink into every part of your being, it just comes through mantras and repetition, because our brain is constantly ticking over in our subconscious saying, you're not worthy, you're not this, you're not that, which is why the I am statements are so powerful. So I am worthy, I am peace-filled, I am joy-filled, I am full of energy. Like those things have to be repeated over and over and over again until they sink into our psyche, because we have to undo years of other voices saying the contrary, including our own voice. So the only way to change that is to repeat the opposite as much as we possibly can. So that's massive for me. And then the second one, from a practical perspective, is once a week, maybe on a Sunday, maybe on a Monday morning, time plan every half hour of your week. And you will be amazed at how much more you will get done. Because when you're busy or you've got a lot going on, sometimes you've just got a lot going on in your head, not necessarily actually being done. And so when you time plan, you think, right, what do I need to do? And instead of having just a to-do list, your to-do list then gets slotted into 30-minute, 1 hour or whatever time sections in your diary. You will do way more than you would do anyway.
That's a game changer as well. I love mantras. Absolutely. Reprogram that subconscious mind and then plan your week on a Sunday when you are chilled and you can take the time to just go over everything and just really be productive and not just busy.
Yeah.
Lewis, thank you so much. I enjoyed this hour with you more than you know, learned so much again. There were so many quotables that I got today that I'm going to go over and just let it sink in. And thank you for the impact that you're making. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to hear about the LifeKraft community joining your Star Trade community as well.
Sounds great to me. And thank you very much for having me. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode and taking the time to invest in yourself and in your future. If you loved this episode, be sure to share it with us by leaving a positive review or tagging us in a post or in your stories. Share one thing that stood out or inspired you to live your everyday life better. This helps us create more meaningful episodes for you to enjoy. If you're not already following us on social media, be sure to follow @LifeKraft for more inspiration and tools to help you live your most powerful life. And remember, you always have the power to craft a better life for yourself, and we are here to help you do just that. We'll connect again in the next episode, and until then, keep creating a life that you're excited to wake up to. We enjoy bringing you interviews from experts and everyday people so that they can talk about their experiences and share information, tips, and what has worked for them on their journey towards a better life. However, remember that the opinions or advice of our guests and myself, the host, should not be taken as personal, actionable advice and is given as general information and education only. Please always remember to consult a qualified professional before implementing any medical, financial, legal, or other advice that you believe might work for you. LifeKraft is not responsible nor liable for your decision when implementing anything you hear on the podcast. Please listen and act responsibly. The opinions of our guests do not represent the opinions or views of LifeKraft or Melissa Lane personally and are meant as information and general education only.